Okay, great. We're officially being recorded. Welcome to everyone who has joined. Thank you for joining us today for our Walking into Marketing Wonderland webinar, just in time for the holidays. I love that name. My name is Liz Gears, and I am a solutions consultant on the MarTech team here at Zirous. You can kind of see the logo behind me. Um, I'm working here on the marketing technology team with Brandon, which I'll introduce in a second here. I'll be introducing Wayne as well, and then we'll be jumping into our conversation. All right, with that being said, I will go ahead and introduce Brandon and Wayne here in just a minute. But first, I wanted to confirm just a couple of housekeeping items. So, as you probably heard when you were coming in, this webinar will be recorded and sent out afterwards. Other than that, we're really excited to have you all here and want to hear from you as well. So I do have the chat open on the side so I can see questions coming in. So as you have any thoughts or questions, please feel free to share them with us in that chat and we'll make sure to get to those. Okay, we do have some time set aside for that later on, but please feel free to send those in at any given time. All right. With all that being said, I'm excited to officially introduce our two panelists today. First, I'll start with my fellow Z team member from the Zirous team. We have Brandon Schulte here. So Brandon is a marketing technology expert with more than 15 years of experience. He understands the challenges faced by marketing and sales leaders to grow revenue while really optimizing the channel efficiency, external spend, and employee productivity. As a results-focused professional, he's known for growing highly scalable sales pipeline and e-commerce revenue utilizing technology solutions, process enhancements, and customer analytics. He holds an MBA degree from Northern Illinois University and teaches strategic leadership in the Concordia University MBA program. Brandon, you're certainly staying busy. Do you want to go ahead and share a bit more about yourself, Zirous, and your role on the team?
Thanks, Liz, and excited to be here with you as well, Wayne. A little background on me. So I've been with Zirous for 4 years. Prior to that, I ran marketing technology within multiple companies that sent millions of emails out per year and ran marketing, technology, and operations overall. A little bit about Zirous. We've been in business for 37 years. In addition to offering marketing technology services such as marketing automation, CRM, event tech, we also have practices focused on analytics, AR, VR, identity and access management, development, managed services, and more. So we're really a full-stop shop here in the technology space to help customers create the right experiences for their customers and integrate those data sources back across the business.
Great, thank you. Couldn't have said it better myself. Today, we are also joined by Wayne Lopez from the Redefine team. Wayne is co-founder and chief product officer at Redefine. He has over 20 years of experience focused on data, customer intelligence, and B2B business applications. He has held key leadership roles, typically in fast-paced, high-growth startup environments in product management leadership at Oak.com, which is a division of Cox Automotive, Trendkite, which has since been acquired by Cision, and VP of Technology and Product in Insperity SaaS division. He has also spent time at notable companies including IBM, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and Capgemini. Wayne is originally from New Orleans, LA, where he graduated from Xavier University of LA. He also has an MBA from the Kogod School of Business at American University in Washington, D.C. He is currently married with 2 children and resides in Austin, Texas, where he's actively involved in the tech startup community and provides mentoring and advisorship to many underrepresented led tech startups. Wayne, that is quite the introduction. We're really glad to have you joining us today. Would you like to also go ahead and share a little bit more about yourself, Vertifying your role on that team?
Thank you, Liz. And I don't know, I don't have the teaching gig yet, like Brandon. I think that's the next thing I need to add, right, to the resume. I'd love to be able to do that as well. But yes, Wayne Lopez, head of product, also running partnerships for Vertify. And I'm thinking about changing my middle name to Data. I've been doing this for so long, and I kind of geek out on this stuff. Brandon and I, when we have these conversations, it's interesting. I even have the kids to a point where they're like, "Dad, we don't have any data to give you on this one." But yeah, I get excited about this stuff. I'm really excited to be here. Just a little bit about Vertify. We were started a little over 7 years ago. We're an integration platform as a service. that focus specifically on revenue tech stack and the revenue teams. So what we try to do is align people, processes, and technology through integration, right? And some of that comes through the way of data orchestration, data cleansing, data quality. Those are some of the components, and really about making data actionable. Because far too often you see things in this space around marketing technology, and they're just kind of moving data, syncing data. But who's ever focused on making data actionable? It's like if you can't actually act on the data, those marketers, those salespeople, the customer success team, like what's the point? And that's one of the things at Verify that we've always sought out to do. And one of the things that I love and really love the partnership that we have with the Zirous team.
That's so great. I'm so glad you highlighted that. Is definitely one of the biggest pain points that I come across in all of my clients. So that's really great. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, with that being said, I know we're all ready to get started. But first, for a little bit more context, I'll ask you both to share some background information on the use cases that you have to share today, just so then we have that and ready to go. And so, Brandon, if you'd like to kick things off and share your use case as well.
Yeah. So my use case is a company that we worked with in the higher ed space. They do marketing and recruiting for universities. They have about 25 different universities, both higher ed, 2-year, 4-year degrees, master's degree programs as well that they recruit for their member schools. And they came to us looking for a solution to use marketing automation as well as using several other technologies to be able to do it. So they sent millions of emails per week. They had the other use case that, for your traditional students, you start recruiting them, maybe midway through their junior year. As they graduate their senior year, you basically have a new cohort of folks you need to bring in. So they managed all their data offline in a centralized database where that they would get from their member schools of their different target audiences they wanted to go after. They also had the unique situation of potentially having duplicates where, one student might be being recruited by multiple universities that they're working for. So they needed to have a concept of purposeful duplicates, because I might be looking at, the University of Nebraska and the University of Iowa and the University of Texas, for example. They also had a situation where they needed to do omni-channel marketing. So obviously email was a huge component of what they wanted to do, but they also needed to be able to use SMS. They also needed to be able to use direct mail with QR codes that would take the person to their site. We worked with them on a solution using Adobe's Marketo product with Verify in the middle of that to be able to really manage that complex ecosystem that they have to be able to be successful for their clients and provide good resources. So what we did with them is they have this centralized database. We use Verify to take those records and then put them into the right partition, which is what Marketo calls their different database attributes for the different schools. So, Brandon as a student might be in the University of Iowa and the University of Nebraska and the University of Texas's instance. And I was able to put the same record in all 3 areas. With that said, on the website and the email side, we had to make sure we branded the platforms. Obviously, you can't get the same email for all 3 different schools that you might be being marketed to. So we worked to develop individualized templates and branding, meeting the guidelines of the customer, both through those landing pages, those emails, and those forms to be able to capture the right information. The last bit of complexity that we really worked with the client was actually like the execution of the initiative. So because when somebody was sent a mailer, most marketing automation systems do based on email address. And obviously because that one individual could be in multiple databases, we had to develop a process where we were able to capture the information on the page, scrape it clean so we'd be able to take that data from the input record or from the form, push that into their internal database where it would be matched to the right university based on the asset content or whatever they saw, and then be able to push that back into Marketo so it would enrich the right of that person's record of those person's records to be able to further market or execute to hopefully get them to become a student of the university. Once we figured out that solution, we were able to use marketing automation to its fullest, sending different nurture and drip campaigns, being able to send SMS messages, being able to, allow them to be bucketed in the right place based on those different direct mail pieces that they had. and we were really able to be successful with it. We were able to nominate this company for the Maverick Award for Adobe. They didn't ultimately win the award, but they were able to be considered for that very lofty award that Marketo has of customers that are kind of doing a lot of unique things different with their products. So we're very happy to partner with Redefine and Adobe on creating a great use case for this customer.
That's awesome. That's a really great use case, and I'm sure a lot of relevant information there that'll be beneficial to this discussion and as well as everyone on the call. So really looking forward to digging into that some more. Wayne, would you like to go ahead and share your use case that you plan to highlight today as well?
Yeah, I want to talk about a use case that in the lead management and custom lead filtering scenario, which oftentimes people think about native integrations and they don't always know or understand that sometimes you have an option, right? You kind of get boxed in oftentimes with native integrations with a lot of these systems, but the beauty of using a platform like Vertify is you get to say, hey, wait, I have my own set of business processes. I want to be able to configure things according to how my business works and not necessarily be limited, to what may be out of the box. Now, combine that with this, particular use case where we're talking about a what we like to call a traditional CRM. So everybody thinks of CRM and synonymous with that. I mean, look at the stock, the ticker symbol for Salesforce is CRM. But what a lot of people fail to realize is that even though Salesforce has a large share of the market, they only represent 30% of the market. There's a lot of other CRMs out there like Zoho, Pipedrive, Sugar, even NetSuite functions as a CRM. And oftentimes we're kind of brought in to work with traditional systems like a Marketo, or a HubSpot, or even a SalesLoft to integrate those things with non-traditional CRMs, where things like custom lead filtering is needed. And typically, why that would be needed is when I'm dealing with routing some of those leads to key people, let's say on the sales team, there might be things like a specific lead score, or in this particular instance, it's a training, learning, and professional development company that says, hey, I need to be able to do something different for this because it's going to a different geography. So I need a salesperson for this geography to do something different than someone else in another geography, or because there's a certain product that this person is interested in from a marketing standpoint, it needs to be routed or filtered a different way. And so you want to have the flexibility and what we're able to do because we get data at like its rawest form, and we don't treat the integration as just kind of like a black box, so to speak. That gave a lot of power to this particular customer to be able to say, oh, I can do this according to custom fields, custom objects, things that make sense to that customer in order to orchestrate the data accordingly. And so having that ability, and again we see this kind of time and again, not just with non-traditional CRMs, but even kind of replacing native integrations with standard CRMs such as a Dynamics or a Salesforce, to be able to do that and satisfy, which oftentimes becomes customizations, but we want to allow for configurability when we're doing that filtering in those customizations.
Absolutely. That customization is so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you both for sharing, the background context there, and I'm sure you'll both continue to build on both of those use cases for our conversation. Now that we're all warmed up, I'll go ahead and jump into our main questions for today. So Wayne, let's go ahead and start with you. The power of marketing automation systems like Marketo are key to driving demand for companies. However, oftentimes those systems don't have access to critical data from other systems needed by marketers. So you kind of touched on this a little bit with your use cases, but as you talk to new prospects, how do you detail the best ways to bring in the right data from different sources?
Yeah, I mean, it always starts and kind of back to the use case I talked about, like what's important for the business, right? What are the different metrics, OKRs, things like that. So, for instance, like everybody's trying to grow revenue, but maybe you have something different. It's like, hey, we have a new product line. Let's use that example because we've had a customer that's like everybody's trying to grow revenue, but oh, we have a new product line. We want to measure, the results of that. Well, the first thing is, hey, do I have the right people in the room that are the stakeholders involved in helping to make the decision on what's important? and what are the optimal outcomes or results of what we're trying to achieve. And so I think that's first and foremost in terms of identifying the people who actually understand the data. Because, far too often, depending on the size of the company, you may have those in leadership that may or may not understand the nuances of the data. And I think it's important to have those stakeholders in the room first, to be able to get to, where you're trying to go with those results. And then I think after that, it's important to leverage documents like, for instance, a thing that we use that Brandon can talk about as well is what we call an IDD, an integration design document, which helps to pinpoint like where are these specific pieces of data, right? Is it in a data warehouse, right? Is it in the CRM? Is it in an ERP? And then kind of bring to light where that data is, and then almost visualize where you want that data to go and where it needs to reside. So we don't have people what we call swivel chairing and having to move through different applications, but again, trying to make the data actionable. So again, gathering the right people, the right stakeholders to pinpoint, who can talk about the nuances of the data, but then also kind of designing what you want the process to look like in order to make that data actionable.
That's so great. I always try to emphasize to clients, and everyone that I speak with, the technology will follow the strategy and not the other way around. So
Absolutely.
that's definitely key.
Good point,
That's actually a
Liz.
great segue. Thank you. That's a great segue to a Brandon question for Brandon. When customers are looking to integrate a marketing automation system with those core platforms like CRM, e-commerce, data warehouses, and so on and so forth, there are a few options that can be employed, such as native connectors, iPaaS platforms like Vertify, and custom development via APIs. Can you detail the differences between these approaches and the pros and cons along with each of those?
Sure, that's a great question, Liz, and we get that quite a bit with customers because in today's day and age, it's very difficult not to integrate a marketing automation platform with other systems, like Wayne said, whether they be standard integration or standard systems, or some of those lesser used systems as well. So when we approach that conversation, there are three different options, by and large. I mean, that customers will go with. So the first one is the native integration. So most platforms are going to have native connectors to core systems that they're going to tie to, that are built by the vendors to be able to talk back and forth. So a great example of that would be, say, like a Marketo and a Salesforce. With Salesforce having 30% of the market share, like Wayne said, it's really critical that, if you want to be a successful vendor, you're going to have to be able to talk to that. Thus, these companies build integrations, preset ways that data moves back and forth. The pros of these integrations are that they're widely used, so they're pretty solid. They also allow you to quickly stand up integrations and really map both standard fields and some custom fields as well. The downside of the native integrations are they're very locked down. So if you have a situation where, say, you have multiple CRMs, maybe multiple data sets that are going to need to interact with data, you're somewhat limited in what you can do, because it's going to tie down certain core objects like your opportunity object or your account object, because potentially it could cause issues or risk because they don't want to open the integration up for those things. The next option is integration and platform as a service, which is the space that Vertify would sit in. This is where you're kind of bridging the difference between custom development, the third option, and the native connector. So this is good because those platforms already have pre-built ways to access data within different platforms. So rather than needing your development team to go out and figure out how to write to the API and ETL data back and forth, these connectors are pre-built. There's also a UI, so a non-technical person can be able to ultimately manage those movements. They need to understand how the data interacts and what the different business rules are, but there's really a method and a process for setting those up. It also allows you to do some things with, like, say, custom, mapping tables or lookup tables if there's different values. So, for example, in one platform, you may have a state code, and the other one it's fully written out. You're able to translate CO to Colorado or TX to Texas, as well as other different things that you might have in terms of like products and things like that. So you're able to do that, whereas the native systems, they don't do that great. If you need that type of mapping, it has to kind of be one-to-one. The last way that we go is custom development. The nice thing about custom development is it's very flexible. You can essentially do just about anything you want to, as long as the API supports your ability to do that. The downside of that is obviously it's costly. You're going to spend significant amount of capital and time and resources, building those connections, setting up those data feeds. In a lot of cases, you're going to need somebody technical to manage those because there's not really going to be a UI associated with that unless you're building that code as well. To be able to do that. So, you can get very granular if you have very, very specific use cases. Custom development can be a good option. But in a lot of cases, it's just so onerous and so labor intensive that, may not make sense for most companies out there. So we really work with customers to understand their business rules, what they need to do, when, why, and how, and then really make the right recommendation for them based on their business objectives on which path to go.
Yeah, and that's a lot of different options there and a lot of pros and cons to each of those. So thank you for sharing that. Wayne, another question for you. Oftentimes, or unfortunately, more often than not, we find that clients have dirty data or duplicates in their system, right? So what are some suggested best practices for cleaning data prior to migrating onto a new platform?
Yeah, so Liz, the good news is, and oftentimes what we coach people on is, it can be daunting sometimes, the amount of data issues, data quality problems, and you can bog yourself down with trying to do almost too much cleaning up front. Although I'm gonna talk about some things. The good news is, you know you can kind of, what we like to say, run it through the car wash as part of the integration, and as part of what we provide is essentially helping to ensure quality data when moving data from point A to point B. But sometimes you need to clean up some things and maybe do just a minimum level. And the first way to get started is, all right, let me figure out what are my data sources, because it's not always coming from another application. Sometimes it's a spreadsheet, a form fill, right? Another database. And so you got to pinpoint and map out what those different data sources are to figure out, like, if I don't have automation in place, that starts to leave yourself open or vulnerable to opportunities for someone to kind of, as they say, fat finger something, which then, opens yourself up to potentially bad data or corrupt data. But you got to figure that part out, map that out, figure out where it originates. And I think that's kind of step one. Um, and then what we like to say is export some of that data, even if it's coming from a CRM, a marketing automation platform, into a spreadsheet or a database to get it in a more readable format. Trying to do this exercise in these applications is just not a good experience because they're not built for that. But if you can get into a data warehouse, a database, or a spreadsheet, it makes it a little bit easier, because it can be a tedious process to kind of at least go through and address some of the things that you want to, fix. You can't, and it's probably would take you too much time to try and address all duplicates or things like that. But again, you want to point out some of the things that might be key items. That's like, oh, this is an obvious problem to fix. Export that data and then re-import it so that you can at least reset your baseline. And again, having a system in place, like a Redefine, which ensures cleanliness through the process, kind of make sure it's an ongoing thing so that you don't have to necessarily revisit, oh, we got to go and export our data and go through that process again.
That's
And
great. Thank you.
Brandon, look, I know you've dealt with this. Zirous has dealt with this a number of times. I want to hear from you some of your other best practices or ideas for dealing with that as well.
Yeah, Wayne, like you said, I mean, it happens all the time. And I really liked how you kind of finished there. So a lot of times people during the initial implementation, they go through all those best practices, they get their data cleaned up, and they start with a pristine database. But then, day one happens and day two happens and day three happens, and, data gets dirty, right? I mean, I think the last study I heard is, roughly 20% of your database atrophies each year because people leave companies or change roles or, there aren't customers anymore. Things like that.
Yeah, it's inevitable.
Yeah, exactly. So what we find is really really important, like you alluded to at the end, is focusing on not just what your day one strategy is, but what your everyday data strategy is for keeping data clean. That involves at the point of entry where data comes into the system, really validating to make sure duplicates aren't being created as part of the process. That also includes when, like, say, emails bounce or unsubscribe, or do things that they don't want to be a customer for you, or they're not there, that you have processes that not only delete the data in that system, but you're sending a flag or information over to another system So say you delete it out of your marketing automation system, that doesn't mean it's deleted out of your CRM system. So then when updates and things process, it may try to push it back. It may cause issues, may recreate the record. So really understanding the end-to-end process about how to keep data clean all throughout the life cycle is really, really important. Sometimes it takes manual work too, just to have somebody who, Marketo and a lot of marketing automation systems have the ability to see, like, here are potential duplicates, looking at that on a regular basis, looking at errors in your data logs when you have integrations, just kind of understand what types of things you're seeing. By keeping that up to date, it's going to help your integrations run smoother. It's going to make sure that you're sending emails to the accurate lists. And it's ultimately going to drive better marketing outcomes for you as well.
That's great. I can, definitely from a client perspective or from someone watching this webinar, that can be a very daunting and tedious task. So I'm, really happy that you guys are highlighting the different tools, and, having a correct process in place is going to be, really critical to that. So thank you. Another question for Brandon. What are some of the key considerations that customers, looking to bring on a marketing automation system or switch systems need to consider in their decision-making process?
Yeah, great. So we obviously work with a lot of customers that are looking to make a change or to bring on a marketing automation platform. And the first thing I really look at is there's three legs of the stool. So there's people, processes, and systems. So a lot of times people are evaluating the system, and is system A better than system B, or is B better than C? And a lot of times they miss the softer side of that decision-making process. So if I go from not having a marketing automation system at all to go to an enterprise grade system, obviously there's some differences in what I'm going to have to do marketing wise. Same thing if I go from maybe a more basic starter type of system to a more advanced system. The processes that I have in place are going to be radically different, because hopefully I'm generating more leads. I'm getting higher value of quantity. I may be able to do things like lead scoring and things like that. So my processes, like I used to have when somebody filled out a form that every time like a salesperson gets an email, we just send everyone through, may not work when now we're getting 1,000 leads a day when we used to get 50, and now we're overwhelming those salespeople with more leads than they can work efficiently, or they don't know the difference between what's a good lead and what's not a good lead. So really understanding your processes and how your team works is certainly important. The other thing that I think is really important is, that training. That's one thing that Zirous, we really try to focus on, and Vertify does as well, is, teaching people how to use the application that they bought. That's one of the biggest differentiators I see between customers that, really see a lot of value out of those type of platforms, and the one they're like, I don't know if we got the value out of it or not, is really making sure that people can, the delta between all the things the system can do and what they can actually do with it is as small as possible. And that's where you're really going to see that value versus cost. So, I've had to sell buying platforms internally with the company, as well as being a consultant as well. A lot of times marketing tools or software in general is looked at as a cost. And what I try to really say is, by doing the people, processes, and system pieces right, and really making sure that is integrated and everything's on point, is you're selling the value. Like, what is the lost revenue or the opportunity cost of not buying this platform? So, say this platform cost me $100,000, but if I'm going to be making, $500,000 on top of what I'm making because of that, then it's a no-brainer not to do. Like, if you don't do this, you're essentially costing yourself $400,000 that you wouldn't have even taking out the cost. So you're really focusing on that. And then the last thing I think that's really important, and we've hit on this a little bit already today too, but really understanding how the data and integrations work. In today's day and age, it's impossible, or almost nearly impossible, to just do things in one platform. So you really need to understand, okay, what are those upstream data sources that populate my platform? And then what are those downstream sources that need it, like a CRM system, to be able to take advantage of that? Understanding that's going to allow you to create better campaigns, be more effective with the system, and ultimately create that revenue and additional value that you're trying to get from moving to a platform like a Marketo or HubSpot or whatever you're looking for.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that's a really holistic view on everything. One thing that you did mention there was, the cost of some of these marketing technology tools. So, Wayne, another question for you, kind of off of this. We often get questions from customers on how to justify the cost of marketing technology tools. How do you position these as revenue drivers for an organization?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in the current economic times, which things seem to be getting better although that's debatable by some of the economists. The first thing historically has been, okay, let's get rid of marketing. It's like, oh, times are tough. And it's like, that's the last thing that you should be doing, right? That's the thing that probably helps to, make the right footprint as you move forward. And kind of to Brandon's point, it's it's the cost of doing business, I think, and needs to be viewed as such. And so if we look at it through the lens of automation, to me, that's what justifies it. There's just things that these tools can do that a person or even a group of people cannot do in the requisite amount of time. And so when you start to look at, and it's not just about email marketing, it's also about just automation of curating through data, looking for opportunities within the data to act on. And so when you can automate these things so that humans can be used for our creativity, for more strategic items, that justifies the cost oftentimes. And it's not about, hey, can I replace a person? It's about, well, what more can that person do? And that's usually the conversation that we like to have in the Martech space, or even talking about the ROI of Vertify. It's like, what else can they now do that adds to the value? Because now I can automate, and then making sure I'm measuring those things, right? So if my output can be greater because I take those mundane tasks, I take those tasks that, it would take me hours upon hours to do that, a machine can do in seconds or minutes, offload that so I can think more strategically as a human, and just continue to automate, and just making sure that we're measuring. And when you do those things, you start to have a compelling story that almost makes it a no-brainer to like, yeah, of course we should invest in this. It totally makes sense.
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you. I think that's something that a lot of companies are lacking. So thank you for sharing that. I think we have time for one more question to Brandon. I think this is a really nice one that we should fit in. And then we'll open it up to the chat. So for anyone who's joined, since we started the webinar, feel free to add your chat or any questions that you might have to the chat. We'd really love to hear from everyone. So Brandon, one more question for you. Oftentimes, a marketing automation tool, the tools associated there are the hub of the marketing ecosystem with other integrated applications handling pieces of a customer's journey. Can you give us an example on how companies should look holistically at their stack to provide the right customer experiences?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we get this integrated ecosystem. And I think one of the selling points from just about every platform on the market is how it can integrate with things. Really you got to the point where there's best of breed applications that, might do this spot or that spot a little bit better, and thinking of how they look at the wider area. So the way I always look at it is, kind of look at the ultimate org structure and kind of how you're put together. So, within a marketing team, you might have one person responsible for digital marketing, somebody else responsible for email, somebody else responsible for events, somebody else responsible for like content marketing. They may all need different platforms to be able to be successful at what they do. So there's very few applications that are going to be one size meets all approach for those. And then if you extend beyond that to other business units within your company, so your sales team, your operations team, your finance team, your HR team, all those other business units are going to make technology purchases that make sense for them. So with understanding that, then you got to, when you're buying a system or you're thinking of how to best integrate that, think of how to put that together. So in most cases, we say, try to find something that works well when you're looking to buy a product. And again, you may not be able to control, what your accounting team buys, but what you can control is things within your department, hopefully. So, if I have this as my marketing automation platform and I'm looking to bring on an event tech platform or a webinar platform or something like that, does it integrate with the platform? If I like those features maybe a hair better from one company that doesn't integrate versus another one that doesn't integrate, probably pick the one that integrates. That's generally a better way to do it. The other thing is really understanding, how I talked about data in a previous question, but how it flows downstream. So, really understanding what information people need and what shape to be able to do it. So it may be great on a form if I can just ask for somebody's email address, but if that makes it 15 times more difficult for my sales team to actually follow up on that lead, Whereas if I ask the phone number, maybe I get a few less leads, but I'm able to increase my hit rate. It's that much better. So just really understanding like some of those process things that maybe aren't a direct integration, but is information that downstream users need, or potentially, upstream users might collect for me to be able to do that, such as maybe the CRM system. The more information they collect on a party, the more ability I have to use segmentation to make sure I'm sending to the right list. If I know, job title and role and responsibility and are they a customer, that type of thing. So that's generally what I would say is important to think about. Again, those are more conceptual or process things than maybe integration things, but I think they're all hugely helpful. Wayne, I'd love to get your perspective on this. Obviously, integration is your business. How do you look at that when it comes to different platforms?
Yeah, and I mean, I'll kind of tie that to there's a question actually in the Q&A around better customer experiences, and I think it's one of those things where there's almost no limit to the things that you can integrate. And I'll take it from a data perspective. The more data, the better. Now, you can get yourself into trouble if you don't do some of the things that we talked about around curating the data, making sure that it's quality data, pinpointing those different sources. But the more that you can pull in data from different places, that enriches the experience. And so you really shouldn't limit and say, well, we should only connect our CRM and marketing automation platform. No, there might be things in your product database, your data warehouse, your ERP. If you have an e-commerce platform, sales enablement tools are now a rich place for rich data. All of those things probably have some corresponding amount of data that can help improve the experience, whether no matter where they are in their journey, and to personalize and make the experience personal. And so there's really no limitations anymore, and having something that can kind of sit at the center of all of that to collect all of that data, because there's just so much data out there, and if you're not careful, you'll miss out on opportunities because you're not touching some other system that could have some pieces of data that could aid in the customer experience. And so we like to say, hey, connect all of it. Look for where those pieces of data are, because there's no excuses anymore. Everything is pretty interoperable to some degree these days, and you don't want to miss out on the opportunity to bring in that data to strengthen and make the customer journey as personal as possible.
Wow. Yes. Thank you both for that wonderful insight there. Wayne, you kind of touched on it a little bit. We do have some questions in the chat, and we are a little bit more than halfway through our time today. So I do want to turn it over to see if anyone has any questions we can answer and make sure we continue providing some great takeaways for everyone. Let's see. So we have one from Anne Marie. Wayne, you kind of touched on this one already, but Brandon, if you have anything to add, the question is, we have an initiative to improve personalization in 2024. Can you give us some guidance on some best practices to create better customer experiences?
Yeah, this is a question we get all the time, specifically in the marketing automation realm. And when I think of personalization, a lot of times people come with it from a tactical approach. So how can I, update my email so like somebody's name or company or something is there? And I really want to look at it more strategically, and that's what we really try to talk to customers about is, really think about it as part of the customer journey. So the who, the what, the when, and the why. And that's more than just like, say, a smart list or the list that you're getting, putting together to send that email or that message to. So for me, the who starts with capturing those interactions and customer data from the platforms that are integrated with your tool. So the more information you have on that person, the more likely you are to target that message to the right person when you're going to segment the person to make sure that you're able to send to the right person at the right time. The what is the next thing that I look at, and this is the assets obviously that you're doing. It's the messaging and the cadence, but it's also things like am I using A/B testing to make sure that I'm looking at the messages that resonate most with my audience to ultimately increase my conversion rate. This is where some of that personalization comes into, not necessarily for just adding those variables I said, but maybe I'm sending a bulk email out to a number of different groups that meet a certain criteria because maybe they download this asset. But maybe if their industry is finance versus SaaS versus insurance or something like that, maybe there's different messaging that we have or different products that would apply to them. So understanding that and being able to use segmentation to use the same email to do in multiple ways. And then, obviously AI is a buzzword now, but really being able to understand what content resonates best with the audience is hugely important. When you come to the win portion of it, that's how do I condense the cycle time? So think of that as your customer journey. Like we can have a customer buy with us, in 3 days, 3 months, or 3 years, right? So when as a marketer and as a salesperson too, how do we condense that cycle to the shortest amount of time possible from when I start talking to them to when they become a customer? So that is, how do I trigger them in and out of different campaigns based on their interaction or status? If I understand that, somebody's in the prospect stage, there's different information I send to them than if they're like actively have an opportunity with my customer, with my company, if they're B2B. And then lastly, the why is certainly important. So a lot of times, like people look at analytics and that's important, but, really being thoughtful about that are, what are the types of assets and type of messaging and type of journeys that ultimately increase my conversion rate? And then understanding what were the catalysts for them making that decision to become a customer with us. So I can do obviously more of what worked and less of what didn't, and really invest my marketing dollars in the way that, ultimately drive better outcomes for my business.
That's perfect. Thank you. Okay. All right. And then we do have another question for Wayne. We've seen that there is often a large gap between product feature sets and what customers actually use. How do you help clients maximize the value of platforms like marketing automation and other connected applications?
So I can give this story from a product management standpoint. I mean, there's the age-old data point that says, customers probably use 20% of your application, right? The other 80% just winds up being fluff. Um, and so I can tell you internally what Vertify even does with technology, right? Is you can get overwhelmed with the features that are there, and it's like, okay, what's important today? Because you're going to evolve as a company. You don't need to use every feature functionality that's there, and so figure out what's important today. Get really good at using those features that are available to you to support those things that are important today, right? And usually I say after 3 months, if you can get that on autopilot, it's like, right, hey, we're using this particular capability. We have that on autopilot. Now, and we look at this kind of quarter by quarter basis. What are the things that have changed with our business? What has evolved? So now we're forced to go back into that particular application or system to say what helps to support the change in our business. And so then 3 months, get it on autopilot. So we like to chunk it up that way, and I think that's what we try to coach customers on, because again, you can totally get overwhelmed with the things that are there, and just so many features. But 3 months, get comfortable, get it on autopilot, then look at how the business has evolved and stack that up against the features that are in the application to say, hey, do we need to now leverage this capability or this feature set?
That's so true. One of the biggest things that, clients come to us with is, how can I automate everything and just sit back and let it work for me? So that's really great. Thank you.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so we are coming up on about 45 minutes here. I do have another question for the both of you from myself. You've both, been in this industry for a number of years. What do you see as some of the most exciting things on the horizon when it comes to marketing technology? Brandon, do you want to go ahead and
Yeah,
start?
you go ahead, Brandon. Yeah.
Sure. I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier. It's a buzzword, but AI, I think, is something that's, hugely impactful. If you believe kind of the media reports, it's going to definitely, reshape our lives in ways like similar to like the Industrial Revolution. I think that's certainly possible. I think what that means for marketers in the short term is being able to use different technologies to really automate some of those customer experience. So whether that's something like live chat, where you're able to target it towards a host of different databases to be able to bring information in, so customers can kind of self-service on your website to understand more about your marketing needs, and be able to present relevant answers, whether that's somebody who is a customer success person, talking to customers and supporting their needs, being able to tap into a host of resources real time to be able to provide the best right answer to that person, I think is hugely impactful. And then some of the things that you're seeing in the ad tech space, as well as the other technology spaces to better target, really working on being able to create content quicker in a lot of spaces. I mean, I think that's one of the things that historically we've seen as maybe the longest pole in the tent is the content creation. So it's not that hard to create ads. It's not that hard to automate emails. It's not that hard to reach out to people. The time that it takes is that human input to, hey, I need to write this content for an email. I need to design this creative. And, if you can leverage some different AI capabilities to be able to, enter a few keywords and phrases and create a great email out there, I think there's certainly some great opportunities for marketers to, work smarter, not harder. To be able to, create all these dynamic evergreen type campaigns that are going to drive value for the organizations without needing to clone themselves, 40 times or, works 80 hours a week to be able to do so. So I think that's something on the horizon, or, it's maybe not even on the horizon, something that we're working with today that will provide tremendous benefits to, marketers and salespeople going forward.
Great, thank you. And then the same question to you, Wayne. What are you most looking forward to that's on the horizon for marketing technology?
Yeah, I think for me, and I've kind of teased this several times, and it's about making data actionable. So when you think about AI and even some of the things about content creation, we're dealing with an abundance of data. Like the data to support artificial intelligence or even machine learning, it's ridiculous. You need a lot of data, and we've gone through this phase where it's like there's very little data to a lot of data to there's probably too much data. But we always like to operate from having too much data is probably better, because then I can be a little bit more discerning with that data. And so now, how can I make the data actionable? How can I act on the right data? Because all data may not be important, but it's like the key pieces of data. But again, you still want to, focus on getting as much data as possible so that you can kind of be a little bit more discerning. So for me, that's the exciting thing, is how do you take what can be an abundance of data and almost too much data and start to wean it down to what is the data that's important? What is the data that I necessarily need to be able to convert this customer or to make it actionable for the salesperson, so on and so forth. So that's what I'm looking for in some of these, new things and new tools and solutions that are coming out, is how they start to focus on that. Because again, we're dealing with data that's just like, even the storage cost to store data has been dropping so much because there's so much of it. It's so plentiful. You got to be able to act on it. So I'm looking for who's going to be able to do that, and that's a calling card, I think, for a lot of marketers.
I agree. I think that's really, really exciting. So you guys both shared a lot of really great insights. We had some really great discussion back and forth today. If you were to sum that all up, again, we can maybe start with Brandon. What takeaways do you guys have for everyone here today?
Sure. Yeah. So I think a couple takeaways that I would have is really looking at your marketing initiatives holistically. So everything from how do I support and budget and get approval for my different technology to how do my systems interact end to end together. I think those are looking at the big picture, I think, is super important. Sometimes we get so laser focused on this is what we are and this is what we do that sometimes we lose the forest through the trees there. So I think that's a big takeaway. I think the other big takeaway is, reach out to experts. I mean, Wayne's been in the business a long time. I have too. We have the gray hair and wrinkles to prove it, right? So, reach out to us. Let us help you out. If we work with you, great. If you don't, that's fine as well. But we want to give guidance and insight. So whether it's through content pieces that we write, different webinars like this that we're on, or even just talking one-on-one, we're here and ready and willing and able to, see if there's a fit. And, it's not no skin off our back if we say like, hey, you have a great setup to validate what you're doing, or we can point you in the direction of somewhere to go. And, best case scenario, we're able to work together and, be part of a partnership long-term. So,
Yep.
yeah, those are a few of the takeaways I had for today.
Great. Yes, thank you. And Dwayne?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just get started. Um, it's so easy to get bogged down with new initiatives to say, well, we have to have everything perfect. And there's an old saying, again, in the engineering and product world, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Like you'll get better at these things as you go. But we've seen companies that delay some of these initiatives and projects months and sometimes years. And Brandon, you alluded to it, missed opportunities, missed revenue, and things like that. And so it doesn't mean that you want to jump into something blindly, not suggesting that at all, but just get started. Once you get started, it's easy to get kind of your feet underneath you with some of these initiatives. And then next thing you know, you taste like, oh, wow, we got this going. Now let's evolve it. Let's keep going. So that's the biggest takeaway for me is don't wait. Get started on some of these initiatives now, because if you don't, you'll look back and you'll say, "Wow, I missed out on opportunities to improve my organization, to get better, to improve myself as an individual." Just get started.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you both for, those points there that you made. I think those are all important things to take into consideration for really any initiative that you're undertaking at your company. So thank you there. Let's see. We haven't had any more questions come in the chat. So that is just about all the time that we have today. So I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I did. I did want to, take a chance to remind everyone of a couple of things. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand, and will be sent in a follow-up. So if you have any questions or you want to find more information, you can also go to Zirous.com or redefine.com, or feel free to, reach out to Brandon or Wayne directly either. I know both of them would be really happy to, connect, have that conversation, validate anything that you're doing or just get pointed in the right direction. So thank you both for speaking on all those great points today. And thanks again for everyone joining. We wish you all a happy holidays. Okay, great. Thank you.